Hello and welcome to more excitable gibberings about the old world. Yes, Games Workshop Warhammer community have published more information about the rules that are going to be coming for Warhammer The Old World next year. First things first, let me say a brief correction to my previous video. It has been pointed out to me by numerous people in the comments that although the wording in the previous Warhammer community article was a little confusing about the turn sequence, I think they are correct in the comments that in actual fact what they were trying to describe in the Warhammer community article is the traditional Warhammer turn sequence, namely a round that is made up of 2 player turns and each player turn being made up of the 4 phases. I think that is actually what they're trying to describe, albeit we'll know for definite once the rules are actually released. But so that's just a brief correction, and thanks to everyone who commented in the previous video just to kind of weighing in on that point. Let's talk about movement. We can't talk about movement without a whippy stick. Games Workshop Warhammer The Old World is going to be a traditional Warhammer fantasy game. It's going to be measured in inches. That's the first thing I suppose that we can take away from the Warhammer community article. But beyond that as well, it's interesting to hear that the movement phase is itself going to be broken down into 4 phases. What we have gleaned from the Warhammer community article today then is this. The turn sequence for the movement phase, really, I suppose the sequence within the movement phase is going to be, first of all, declare charges. Then it's going to be the reactions to those charges. Then it's going to be the moving of charges. And then it's going to be all other remaining moves. And within that, we've got a glimpse of what the charge sequence is going to look like. First things first, and something that kind of blows me away slightly is this. You are allowed to pre-measure. I'm just... head explode. Yeah, mind blown! A huge part of the kind of the expected skill set for playing Warhammer for years was the ability to guess distances, to look at something and go, ooh, yeah, that looks like it might be about 8 inches. Measure. Yay, it is! Or no, I'm half an inch out, or whatever. Contained within the rules leak from today's Warhammer community article is the announcement that you are allowed to pre-measure the distance between your unit and the target unit before you make your charge. Now, this would seem to almost just kind of be, well, it just go with the Lord of the Rings model system. I want to move a charge, I move it. Hooray! The randomizing element that will still mean there is a tactical edge to this is explained, and this is something that we saw a little bit in kind of 8th edition fantasy, is that your charge will be made up of your move characteristic plus a d6 roll. So you're looking at having to go, okay, well, my maximum charge range is, and we got a movement example here. Skeleton warriors apparently have a movement of 4 inches, so a skeleton will charge between 5 inches and 10 inches. So, yeah, okay, we have an expectation that that's what the maximum charge range you're going to be able to achieve with your model is. You can look at it on the board and go, okay, I'm 8 inches away. Yeah, I'm likely to be able to get in. Beyond that, though, as well, and one of the things that drove me slightly mad about 8th edition, and continues to make 40k a little bit too eclectic for me, is that whereas in 8th edition you would look at it and go, okay, it's a charge of my movement plus 2d6. Oh no, I rolled a 2. You know, my Bretonian knights go all of about 7 inches forward. The dwarves have rolled. They've rolled 12. Oh yeah, the dwarves are charging further across the field than the fast cavalry are. It just didn't make sense. And in 40k as well. Oh, I'm going to make this charge. Random 2d6 inch charge roll, which could be anything between this and that. You will roll 2d6 and pick the highest. So you know that you've got a better than average odds of getting at the very least like a 3 or a 4 on one of those 2 dice, which means that at the very least, as long as you are within your move characteristic and 3 or 4 inches, which frankly, when you think about it, a skeleton unit used to be able to charge double its movement, so 4 inches, charging 8 inches, you're rolling a 4, you're rolling basically the same as if you had doubled your movement. So it still comes down to not necessarily estimating distances now, but playing the odds and estimating the odds. But also, rules such as Swift Stride, which again were present during 8th edition fantasy, will still be a factor for cavalry units, for example, and I'm assuming other units that have, like, speedy legs, and scurry across the board, will allow you to, for example, roll an extra dice, and you're not just going your movement plus d6 inches, you're going your movement plus 2d6 inches, and you're rolling 3 dice and picking the highest 2, which is, again, pretty awesome. The other thing, though, that somewhat blows my mind from the article that we saw today, so the charging stuff is cool, and it's got exactly what we would expect. You can stand, you can shoot, you can flee. All the charge reactions that we knew and loved in previous editions of Fantasy are going to be there. But the formation in which you are moving will play a factor in how fast you move. Yes, spoiler alert, the thing that we will all be collecting, apparently, in Warhammer The Old World is movement trays. Because I'm going to need a movement tray for my unit when they are in close order, or combat order, as it seems to be known, which is the traditional wide and fat version. Wide and fat, that's me. Your wide and fat unit, squadron across the board. But equally, you could move into marching formation, marching order, which means that you go narrow and long. You form a column and a march across the board you go. Marching in previous editions of Fantasy let you go twice your movement. So it was the same almost as if you were charging, except you didn't come into contact with the enemy. So you'd go, oh, my skeletons, they could move 4 or march 8 or charge 8. In Warhammer The Old World, you will be able to go 3 times your movement speed if you are in marching order. But whilst you are in marching order, you can't shoot, you can't fight, or you can't charge. Presumably, if someone charges you, you can still fight, but I'm assuming when we get to combat, we'll find out that there are negatives for having been in marching order, not just the fact that you're only like 3 models wide, and therefore get jumped up and down on by orcs in big boots. But yes, your unit of skeleton warriors, to follow the example then, can go move 4 inches, charge somewhere between 5 and 10 inches, or march 15 across the board. But when they are in marching order, you will need a narrow and not long and narrow movement tray for them to move in. And if you're a Bretonian Knights unit, you'll just form up into lance formation and kind of blow a horn and zoom around the board. But yeah, so I guess you're going to need different movement trays depending on whether you're moving in close combat order, marching order, or whether there might even be other orders that we don't yet know about, like shooting order, form up line, and you form or form a square or whatever. We also don't know what it's going to cost you to get into that different formation. So in previous editions of the rules, it cost you basically your whole movement to change formation. Now, if that's the case of you going, okay, well, I want to march this unit, so I have to stay still for an entire turn and form a marching order. Then the next turn, in turn 2, I can march. And then in turn 3, I have to reform into a close combat order. That's half a game spent just going 15 inches across the board, which isn't great. So what I'm hoping is that presumably it will be simply the case that in a turn, at the start of the turn, maybe you choose what formation you are moving in. So you go, okay, this turn I'm going to be in close combat order. You form a nice big block of square guys. As it describes in the Warhammer community article, wider in the rank than they are in the file, which is a nice way of describing it. So you're looking at a unit that is wider than it is deeper. Then maybe you go, okay, no, this turn I want this unit to march. So they form into a marching order, which from the pictures and the diagram seems to be like 3 models wide and as long as you've got models, at which point you then speed in a straight line across the board. And then in your next turn, you form a new formation. Hopefully, again, this not costing you any of your moves. So maybe you go, okay, I want to fight this turn, so we're going to form close order combat formation and charge. As long as there is something within the rules that allows you to do that, I think this is a really cool innovation. I'm really excited to see what else they kind of do with the rules on that, and I'm assuming that there will be things like spells and magic items that let you do things like maybe re-roll one of the charging dice, or roll like counts having the Swift Stride rule and roll an extra dice, or roll 3d6 and pick the highest for your charge. Who knows? It's dead exciting. As you can tell, I'm really loving this weekly burst from the Warhammer community team, just giving us flavour of the rules. I'm looking forward now, so next week it looks as though it's going to be shooting, so I will be back next week with some information about shooting, but in the meantime you can catch me back here on Friday for another of my weekly videos. If you fancy it, take a browse through the archive. You might well find that there's something in my back catalogue that tickles your fancy. I think I've got enough videos there at this point that there's probably something that reflects one of your interests. I'm torn about whether or not this week to do the epic 40,000 video I was thinking about doing, or a Battlefleet Gothic video. So perhaps let me know in the comments below which you would prefer to see, and I'll upload that one ready for this Friday. Thanks very much for watching. I will catch you next time. Bye for now.